This is an orchid. An orchid is an epiphyte. Epiphytes are a group of plants that grow on other plants and don't actually send their roots into the soil. Which brings me, in a roundabout sort of way, to why I decided to cut off all of my hair. Basically, since personal hygiene options may be fairly limited on my trip, I decided it would be better to cut off my potentially gnarly hair rather than accrue an ecosystem of all sorts of tropical animals and plants. Big thanks to Alex, who stepped up enthusiastically with scissors in hand once I'd finally made the decision to make it happen. And also to Mike, who cleaned me up and made me look presentable afterwards. Alright, now let's go to Baja.
I had to stop and put some more layers on. It's cold today. This is probably the coldest weather I'll be riding through, at least until I get to the Andes, South America. I hope so, because man, I'm wearing just about all of the layers I can right now, and it's still kind of chilly. Behind me here you can see the mountain with the, well, you probably can't see it because this is a wide angle.
Let me just get out my zoom lens here. Alright, there we go. In front of me now you can see the telescopes on top of Kip Peak, which are actually the largest collection of optical telescopes in the entire world. And I had some great footage, but I accidentally deleted it all, so this is all you guys get for now.
Welcome to Y, Arizona, everybody.
I decided to find a spot to camp on the BLM land outside of Y, and that gave me the unexpected opportunity to practice driving this really heavy bike through really soft sand. I almost fell over a number of times before I got to camp, and then on the way out in the morning I actually did fall over once. Fortunately, the sand was so deep that the bike was still less than 45 degrees from vertical when it came to rest on the panniers. This, of course, made it really easy to pick up again. Unfortunately, after that it was hard to get going because I was stuck in deep sand, and the rear tire dug into the dirt several times. I had to lift the bike up from the back and kick dirt under the tire so that I could get enough traction to go forward a few inches. I repeated this process 20 or 30 times and then finally got out of the huge sand pit I was stuck in. As frustrating as all this was, it was a great learning experience, and now I have a lot more confidence in my sand riding abilities, and I also know I can get the bike unstuck by myself if I need to.
So I just had a minor heart attack while I was setting up my lovely camp over here. My keys fell out of this hole in my pocket, and I ended up pitching the tent on top of them. It took me a while before I thought maybe I should look under the tent. That was a wonderful experience. So now that hole is going to get patched. Looks like it got a bit colder last night than I expected it was going to. The forecast was for 33 degrees. I think it was quite a bit colder than that. Fortunately, I was warm enough with my down sleeping bag, but everything is covered in frost. I'm at Organ Pipe National Monument now, and from this point on, everything is going to be new for me. You guys ready to go to Mexico? Come on, let's go!
Crossing the border at Sonoy to Lukeville was for me the most pleasant border crossing experience I've had in my entire life, I think. There were no lines, I was the only one in the office, and I was able to conduct all my transactions in Spanish, now that I can actually speak Spanish, which was really nice. The Mexican immigrations official was extremely helpful and even told me where I could get my vehicle import permit when I cross over again in Nogales. And I could even understand his directions. It was great.
I'm in the Pinacate volcano field right now. It's a huge black spot in the middle of a sea of sand. You can see one of the cinder cones there behind me. The main volcano field is off that direction. It's quite windy this morning. Although I have to say, Mexican Highway number 2 is quite nice. It's just been recently repaved. If it wasn't for the wind and the cold, this would be a very pleasant drive. In the distance behind me there, you can see the top of the Altar Erg. What's an erg, you might ask? An erg is the largest classification of dune. It comes from an Arabic word that means basically big-ass dunes. The Altar erg is estimated to contain 60 cubic kilometers of sand. That's quite a lot of sand. It's also the largest active dune field in all of North America.
But I'm not going to drive out there because number one, the gate is locked, and number two, I've had enough sand for one day. So I made it to San Felipe, all right? It was a long, cold, and windy ride. I got to spend the night in a real bed last night, which was a real treat after sleeping on the ground. But the best part of this place is out here. Check this out. That's the Sea of Cortez, right outside the front door. Here's something that I've certainly never seen before. A dead dolphin washed up on the beach. It's been kind of picked at by scavengers, and I can't speculate as to the cause of death, but it's kind of fascinating and sad all at the same time. I spent a few glorious hours on the beach with my new friends Liz, Paul, and Panchito, learning how to fly this giant kite. Well, I thought it was a giant kite. Paul informed me later that this kite is only half the size of what kite surfers normally use. Still, it dragged me all over the beach, and I was exhausted after flying it for just a few minutes. Later that evening, the rest of my friends arrived, and we went out to a bar for a few beers and to play a version of ping pong that I had no idea even existed. I had a great time with everybody, and I wish I could have stayed longer. Maybe I'll be back from South America in time to come back to San Felipe for New Year's again next year. The weather forecast shows a giant winter storm coming, so I decided to take off a day early from San Felipe. I have to say thank you to Francesca for inviting me out to her family's place on the beach. It's absolutely incredible, and I can't wait to come back again. Oh look, there's more deep sand to drive through. But by now, that's not even a problem. I'm an expert in driving through sand. The problem is the dogs. Seriously though, this little guy here, his name is Tarzan, and we're great friends when I'm not on the motorcycle. But when I'm on the motorcycle, he is filled with a raging bloodlust that can only be satiated by jumping onto my boots as hard as possible. So since I was friends with these dogs, all I had to do was get off the motorcycle and take off my helmet and pet them, and then they would leave me alone. But I realized this isn't a feasible solution for every dog I encounter on my trip. So, fellow motorcycle people, what advice do you have for dealing with dogs? Because if I have to get off the motorcycle and befriend every stray dog between here and Argentina, this trip is going to take years. You know what's worse than dogs? Sand and dogs together at the same time. I cannot even remember the last time I had that much fun. Now at this point I'm fairly certain that if I ever commit to doing a full Baja trip, I will be using some different tires. And probably I'll be packing lighter as well. But that's for the future. Right now all I have to worry about is not falling over. The highways crossing the salt flats at the end of the Colorado River Delta here are some of the longest and straightest I've ever been on. You see that mountain in the distance? This road didn't turn until well after I passed that mountain. I'm eternally grateful that there's a paved road here and that I didn't have to drive through all of that sand. I think all in all this trip went really well, and I learned a lot that'll help make the rest of the Pan-American trip much easier. But I'd like to hear from you guys as well. Any advice you may have, whether it's about the videos or the motorcycle or anything really, please let me know in the comments, and I look forward to hearing from you. That's all for now. I'll see you guys next time when I'm in Mazatlan, Mexico.